I mean, look, not regretful, but I think sad, because, yes, the European Union has many problems. Yes, the European Union needs to be reformed, but at its heart, it is an institution that has enabled peace, stability, cooperation and a deep alliance across Europe. And we were integral to that, and we were key to shaping and driving that. And today we walk away from it. And I think it is historical, it's defining, but it's also sad.
When did it really come into people's minds, this idea of leaving the European Union?
Well, so my take on it is it's the economy, stupid. And I say that because there's always been a sort of you're a strict sceptic strand in the country. But actually, for most people, who don't really care or think about the EU in the way that they have done over the last 3 or so years. And I think, in part, a set of economic conditions in this country meant that the kind of Eurosceptic thread in the country was able to form a coalition with people that want to change. And I go back to that Brexit vote. The referendum was huge swathes of the country saying something has to change, enough is enough of the current settlement, and we want change. And it was that alliance that allowed the majority for Remain. And so the one thing we have to take from this is whatever happens, there has to be change. And that goes beyond Europe. That is about things that we must do in this country. That is about things that we must do to fundamentally re-gear our economy so that it works for people. And if we don't get that right, we have lost a huge opportunity. But the political backlash from that will be phenomenal.
How much of an issue was the expansion of the EU to the accession countries during the 2000s, when the issue of immigration seemed to come to the fore?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was an issue, but the key issue was the fact that our government chose not to put in transitional arrangements to kind of manage the inflow of immigration. That was a domestic choice. Other countries chose to do something in the European Union. But that did politicise the issue of immigration, in my view, wrongly so, but that's what it did. So, again, it was the combination of the economic, the combination of kind of the politicisation, the othering of immigrants that kind of partly got us there.
Right.
And I hope we kind of put that behind us, and you know it is hopefully a new dawn. Like I'm an optimist, so I'm going to take the Prime Minister at his words. But you know that there is a toxic strand of our politics that we must put to bed, and if we don't, I think it will be deeply corrosive and deeply divisive, and we've got to knit the country back together. Well, look, he has his place in history. I'm not sure it's the place in history that he wanted.
That's a very neutral, carefully placed comment.
He's got to own that place. It's his place.
It is his place. And I guess, you know, whether that's written up in a positive or negative way depends on a set of decisions that are out of his control now. It depends on what Boris Johnson does in terms of a future negotiation. It depends on the plan that Boris Johnson puts in place or doesn't put in place to take the country forward. So I don't blame him for feeling a bit nervous.
Right. I mean, was there, though, a fundamental failure on behalf of politicians like David Cameron, he wasn't the only one, to build a positive image of the EU?
Yeah, and if you look back to that referendum, I think on the Remain side, it was Project Fear. There was a debate about the impact of the economy, which is, you know, it was a real and genuine point about the impact on the economy. But at no point was there actually talking about the vision that Europe is trying to put forward, talking about the stability and the peace and the prosperity that's been created by being part of the European Union. And what we had decades where, on the other side, there was the constant vilification of Europe and what it did. And actually, no one was really defending or beating the drum for Europe. And so I think there was a failure on the other side.
It was more than money. It was more than how worse off you'll be. And the Project Fear documents that George Osborne put out is more than just GDP differences. It's about a fundamental part of being British, maybe, and sovereignty, which appeared to escape David Cameron.
I mean, the vote happened in 2016. Why has it taken so long to get to this point? When you remember that Parliament voted overwhelmingly to enact Article 50, the process to leave, why did it take so long?
Because, you know, we're laughing a little bit at David Cameron there, but to be fair to him, he has not undermined, you know, either of his successors. He did accept the result. He was true to his word. He walked away from, you know, office, which may have upset quite a lot of people, but he's never tried to deny that the outcome of the vote should have been implemented. I'm afraid that wasn't true of an awful lot of parliamentarians. Parliamentarians said that they respected the referendum result, but whatever kind of deal was put forward, they seemed to find some objection to it. And, of course, we had a speaker who stopped being a neutral chairman of proceedings and actively sided with Dominic Grieve and other people at repeated opportunities to frustrate, to bend the rules of Parliament, to enable those saboteurs to do what they did. And it was only the general election when we finally had a Parliament where we had enough Leave MPs who meant what they said about respecting the result that we've got passage of the bill.
Your tone of reconciliation, we don't use the language of saboteurs. And, to be
Good
fair...
point.
You've slipped back into it.
I am. I will slap my wrist.
But, to be fair to MPs, I think where David Cameron went wrong and why I think, the history books are yet to make that kind of judgment on him is that we ran that referendum and it wasn't clear what we meant by leaving. And the quandary, the difficulty for Parliament was trying to interpret what that decision meant in terms of the sort of relationship we wanted. And we haven't reconciled that. That is still to come. But at the heart, the rupture we saw in Parliament, I don't think was parliamentarians being just resistant. There were people that wanted to stay, and that's true. But for the broad majority of MPs, it was like, we don't understand how to interpret that result to an outcome that is good for the country, and we're working through this.
It was more than that, I think. Yeah, I think they genuinely didn't really want...
But not for the majority, on all sides, because it was as much about the Brexiteers actually obfuscating those deals as it was the Remainers. So in the end... The instruction for the public was clear. We want to leave, but on what terms? We have no idea. We still don't know, and that still has to be...
Is it the right move to make a case for freedom of movement?
Well, I definitely think we need to have a more grown-up conversation about migration, because I think actually the debate has been very polarising, very toxic and very coarse. And actually there are huge benefits to immigration. And if you were to stop migration today, huge parts of our economy, the construction sector for one, would fall to its knees.
But the government isn't proposing that, is it?
Well, it's still unclear what the government exactly wants to do. They were talking about an Australian point system. The Migration Advisory Committee said that was a meaningless slogan. So we have yet to see exactly what the government's going to do. But in our debate, I think we do need to have a serious conversation about the role of migration, actually the benefits, and also there have been downsides. But I would argue those downsides are because our governments haven't managed it. Those downsides are because our government failed to invest in communities, failed to invest in public services where there was an increase in migration. It was a failure of public policy, not a failure of immigration.